Alright, so, you guys ready to rehash it today? Let's see, so, no, you guys have heard a lot about the obstacles, right? There are a lot of obstacles. And the interesting thing about obstacles, it's different for every company, right? Depending on what you've invested in cybersecurity and compliance in the past, you're already that far along. If you've been following the DFARS 7012 and you've been signing those flow downs and you've been doing everything that they said, all you need to do is get an audit. You're already there, right? And you all signed that paper, and that would mean that you're ready to go. If you didn't, then maybe there's some questions there. And so that's what we're going to hear about, is assuming that we've gotten through the obstacles, you guys have implemented and gotten your level 2 certification. We're going to talk about, so now what? How do I get my return on investment? So we're going to have a business discussion here. Before I do that, how many owners are here of companies? How many business devs are here? Salespeople. Okay, this is going to be for you, not about a project manager implementation of the 110 controls. 320 control objectives, step by step, one by one, right? That's a project in itself. And just remember, this is not a project, this is a program. You've got to get there and stay there, right? It's like your safety program. Once you get there, you've got annual, quarterly evidence reports. So that's a real mindset. But this becomes a strategic value if you get your CMMC Level 2. And since I'm just talking, there are only 387 companies in the world that have actually got their CMMC Level 2. I think that's right, Mike? Around that. Yeah, 75 are in process through their C3POs, and 16 that are in conditional, so around 400. Of the, well, there's 330,000 in the DIB according to the DoD, but 120,000 of those will need Level 2, either self-attestation or full C3PO over the next 3 years. So 400 out of 120,000. Do you think if you had your certification that would bring some value to your customers, to your partners, to other markets? Well, let's talk about that, because this, well, just quickly before so I've been around the CMMC industry since it started. I was on the original Cyber AV standards group. I helped draft some of the content that has been talked about here, and have stayed consistently involved. I co-chair the CISC, which is CMMC industry standards group, which supports the Cyber AV. I was one of the provisional assessors, one of the first 100 that actually got, which is equivalent to CCA. I did my CCP, CCA, and still doing that. And actually my claim to fame is that original standards group got a presidential award. And there was 15 of us, and Joy's boss, Scott Edwards, was on there, and several others. But that's a pretty unique and remarkable thing in my life, to be part of the mission, the journey, and to protect the warfighter. So that's why I'm still up here, and I'm passionate about that. But the other thing that's really passionate for me is, I've been out here in the Northwest. I live in Seattle. So I've been in this ecosystem for about 7, 8 years. I've been the only CCA out here forever. Now you've heard a couple other ones here, but we're not paying attention to what's going on in DC. The other side of the Cascades, or even the Rockies, they're on this. They're starting to get certified. They're starting to take market share, and we'll talk about that, what we need to be doing to get more business to the Northwest for our kids and grandkids, right? That's what we want. This is what we're going to talk about today. So think about that. Think out of your box. Think about how I can build my market share and bring more business to the Pacific Northwest and Kitsap Peninsula, so forth and so on. And this is what gets me excited and jazzed, and why I'm here. So let's dig into that a little bit. So, whenever the federal government changes the rules, there are new winners and losers, right? You guys ever notice that? Just look at the political changes that are going on. People are getting out and new ones are coming in. Well, this is probably the greatest opportunity in your lifetime if you look at what we're doing in cybersecurity and compliance, and the DoD being the point of the spear, right? So think ahead. Everybody wants their data protected. Everybody wants it secure. The federal government's leading the way through the DoD, but I bet you in another year or two we'll hear from the Department of Homeland Services. We'll hear from NASA. We'll hear from every agency around the NIST 800-171, the FAR 52 rule, all adopting CMMC-like certifications, which means you're going to be meeting 100, 1-800-171 R2, either as a self-assessment or a third-party audit, which means this is table stakes, right? You're the point of the spear, so think about it from an opportunity. We'll get into more details, but this is coming. This is the first step in a long journey. I think we had several slides about the growth in companies and vendors and all the other things that are going to support this ecosystem. But the bottom line is you did this to maintain business and revenue and growth, right? You don't want to go out of business, or you could go out of business out of the DoD, say, I'm not going to do that anymore, right? That's a choice you have as a business, but a lot of opportunity there. So you're probably here because defense business is really important to you. The other thing is, with these new revenue opportunities and these new regulations comes new liabilities, right? You've all heard the False Claims Act. You put a SPURS score up there, and I think Ace is here, but he asked, hey, some guys are putting 110 out there, but they get audited by DIDCAC or somebody else, and they really had a minus 100, right? Not a good show, right? Those people can be basically said that they lied to the government, got paid, they signed their flow down contract they were doing, but they really weren't. Insider might turn them in. High risk of that going on. But if you do the work, your liability is less, right? Just do the job, right? There's nothing super hard about this stuff. But it's reducing liability, increasing revenue, and really it's all about trust, right? If your customers and your employees trust you more, they're going to work harder, people are going to keep buying from you. And that's what we want to talk about. So those are the three basic things that we're all about and why you're here, and we're going that way. So how big is this opportunity for you guys? I mean, this is a big number, $1 trillion. You have to understand the defense industrial base is the largest business in the world, right? But it's the most unregulated, and it has been the most unregulated, which is a problem, right? We've underinvested, we've had exfiltration from the Chinese, Russian, and then we got ransomware all over the place. It all affects our CUI. So that's why the DoD is saying, we can't just trust you anymore. We're going to need to verify. And that's what it's all about. So with the $1 trillion, this number, you can never lock this down because nobody even knows how many defense suppliers there really are out there, right? Or federal suppliers. It's just nobody has that tracking with the SPURS, the new unique ID, tying it to KH codes. The DoD is building that knowledge base, so they'll be able to say, for that program, here's the prime, and here are the 150 subcontractors tied to that prime. Nobody can see that today, not even the prime. That's what they're building to get visibility to manage this whole ecosystem. So as part of that $1 trillion, the real interesting thing that it really caught my mind of why we're underinvested. If you look at the financial services industry, has SOX, PCI, and they're highly regulated. They're spending 8 to 10 or 15% of their revenue on security and cybersecurity. Pretty big number, right? But they've got lots of requirements. And if you look historically at the defense industrial base, the folks in the room, it's been 1 to 2, maybe 4. So there's a gap of 6 to 8% of investments off of revenue that hasn't been going into our IT, our business processes, our physical security, that now, because we're regulated, we're behind the 8 ball. We're going to be more regulated than probably the financial institutions by the time this is done. So the opportunity is that huge amounts of gap that need to be filled with people, process, and technology. So that's not only for products that you guys make, that companies want secure products so they get reduced liability when they do a proposal, but vendors like the ones in the room here. The ones here are really important because they've taken the step up to a higher bar. And you're going to need that higher bar vendor with you when you sit down with the auditor, because they're going to see that shared responsibility model. What are you doing? What are you sharing? And what are they doing? And if it doesn't meet the criteria, you fail, right? So having vendors like this here is really important, and there's a huge opportunity for them. With cloud service providers, consultants, trainers, GRC tools, consultants like myself who do this type of work. Huge opportunities, not only in the DIB, but over the next 20, 30 years. So. Yeah, huge addressable market. And if you think, and I guess this one, but 300,000 say in the DIB, but there's probably about 2 million federal contractors that are going to need to go through this over the next 5 or 10 years. They're going to have to secure their internal systems and also their supply chains. So if you have other ideas of going into other agencies or supply chains, you've got a huge advantage by being secure and compliant and talking about we're a lower risk supplier that meets your needs. Why are you sticking with people that aren't? So think about that. We'll go into more of that in a second. So this is a summary. What are your strategic opportunities? This is where you got to think out of the box. Some of you may already be here, but the one on the eligibility for CUI contracts. This is the one that just keeps you in the game with the DoD, right? If you don't do that, you don't get your level 2 and hit the 110 score. Effectively, you can't get a DoD contract. Game over. And if you wait till too late, like Kyle was saying, you might think you're there, but it's pretty risky to go through the audit a week before that contract RFP is due, and you fail, right? That prime's going to go, I can't include you. I got to go with my backup. And once you're gone, you're gone. He's going to find somebody to replace you. But so job one is to get your level 2, just so you can continue to do the business that you do today. Second one is, okay, now that you have it, assume you got it, what about my primes? I mentioned there's only 400 subcontractors, and most of these are prime and early adopters that have made these investments. They've got the early certification because they see the opportunity of market acquisition. So if you have your level 2, your customer should be knowing that. You should be yelling off the walls because they're going to go, whoa, you're low risk. Might be a little more expensive, but I can trust you. You're already there. I don't have to look at you as a risk to either my current bid or a future contract. So relationships with your existing customers is really important, and we'll dig into that a little bit more. How do you beat somebody that's 10 times larger than you, right? That's been an incumbent for 20 years. You beat them by, hey, they don't meet the requirements. They don't have level 2. I do. I'm the same price or not better. Give me a shot. Look for those opportunities to your competitors, because there's a question is how public does this information get? We'll talk about that in a little bit, but if you're out there saying you have it, your contract officer, your customers are all going to know that, and they're going to know the other guys that they're looking at aren't. It's kind of a checklist. Have CMMC Level 2? Nope, I can't go with you guys, sorry. Well, we're going to be done in 6 months. 6 months, 6 years? Who knows? You know how long it takes to get compliant? It can be pretty fast if you're a small company, or it can be pretty big if you're a multinational, multi-site company that's trying to secure some parts, right? That could be 18, 20 months. It's a big difference, so there's a lot of risk. So getting that certification first is so important to driving the credibility, the lower liability and risk for your customers. There's access to strategic programs, and I don't know a lot about this, but there are programs at certain primes, like certain, like I think I call out the some R&D or classified next-gen programs that they can only bring in level 2s, maybe even level 3s into those programs. So if you're not there, you're not going to get to those specialized programs, which might be 30-year type of programs. So it's another benefit to look at when you're out thinking about, well, who else do I go talk to? Special program opportunities you may not have been able to get to before because you're too small, you weren't big enough, but now you've got a competitive advantage. Do it. The reduced risk of contract loss, obviously, if you got certified, you're more likely to get included in RFIs and to win RFPs. I got a quick example. Once the SPUR scores were entered into SPRS, one of my customers had a competitor. This competitor had like a 30-point higher SPRS score, so you can do it because they talked, right? Because it wasn't a big deal then. But then he said, they're getting a lot more contracts than we are. Why? We come to find out that the procurement officers were just going into SPUR and say, hey, if anybody below this score, we're not going to include them in the RFIs anymore. The ones over that would get selected in. So even though they didn't have a minimum, all you had to do was have a score, then you were eligible for a contract. They still put in a 88 score, which we're talking about now, as a minimum just to get a conditional, right? There, it was up to the contract officer. All that's going to be fixed, right? There's none of this who does what, when, where. It's going to be very fixed for all, so you're going to see all that change. But having a good SPUR scores helped you win more contracts over the last few years. We'll look at a case study after this that shows how that worked. But then the last one here is, you got to look at your company itself, right? You want to preserve your own data as well as the CUI for the federal government, but for all your customers. So you're going to be more inclined to have a higher cybersecurity compliance bar. And again, cybersecurity and compliance are not equal. Being compliant doesn't mean you're secure. So you really have to look strategically at what level of security you want to build into your organization. You can have a high level of security that easily meets compliance, and that's what you should be doing, right? Let compliance catch up to security. That's always the way to think about compliance as the tail wagging the dog, forcing you to get a higher level of security. So, just watch that. So, think outside the box. These are all avenues. Let's look at a case study. So, the first company, Arrow Glen International. How many have heard of that? You should have all heard of it. This was the first company, DIB, $16 million company in Dallas, Texas, that got through the first joint surveillance, back when they were doing joint surveillance before they had the actual 48 and 32 rules. First one. They had one of their customers, Windcore, $155 million company. I won't tell you how long it took Arrow Glen to get their JSVA, but it was over a year, and they had a couple shots at it where they thought they were good enough, but they got kicked out. They had to get one of the local MEPs to come help them with some other folks. So they actually got CMMC ready, and they lived it for 6 months. So when the actual audit came, it was just like a rubber stamp, because it was institutionalized into their organization. Not just sitting on the documentation wasn't on the shelf. They just lived it, right? It was secure by design. So that's the easiest way to pass your audits, is just implement that in your organizations. I know we're on tight time frames, so you're going to have to grow into that. But that's the right way to do it. We're running out of time. So, but Arrow Glen was just providing some sort of a product to Windcore. They got their certification, and Windcore actually said, hey, we want to buy you because you're already certified with CMMC, and there's huge value in that now, right? They have a secure, compliant product that's now part of their suite of products that they're selling. And so those guys actually sold within 6 months of getting certified. So one of your exit strategies, owners, is to get certified, work with your supplier or your customers and say, hey, I just raised my value of my company. I want to sell out. I don't want to continue this road. So that's one of the options that you have as an owner of your company if you get certified. We'll talk a little bit more about what's a migrating return on investment. That was a big one for them. So people get acquired. They see value in that. And so I just mentioned that as just one, the first DIB that went through this whole process. Let's jump in here. Okay, so the business development guys. DOD's point to the spear. We talked a little bit about that. So if you do it for the DOD, you can go do it for anybody, right? Military grade, military strength, and then you can take it to any of the other agencies and differentiate yourself from any of the other federal government contractors that are going to try to be maintaining their contracts and going the same thing that you're going through, but for different agencies. So you're going to come in with military strength, you've got it down, and you're going to win some market share. Trust me, we've seen it. Like I mentioned, having a higher SPUR score, we've seen that pre-CMMC Level 2, but 400 and you're there, you're going to be getting it, so there's no doubt in my mind. And like Joy or Kyle, if you get your CMMC Level 2, do they have a more competitive advantage compared to everybody? Is that right? Yeah. So it's not just me saying that, it's what we're seeing with our customers as well. Acquisitions, getting more market share, winning more contracts. So this is the opportunity you have. We talked about displace those incumbents that you haven't been able to get rid of because they've been in that role for 20, 30 years, and the people that buy the contracts know them as personal friend on the golf course, right? They can't do that anymore. They have to get rid of them because the DOD will end their contracts. So huge opportunity for displacement for small businesses that can get certified quickly with an enclave approach. We talked about that earlier, with a GCC high approach, or there are some other hosted approach. CMMC advisors working with an on-premise CMMC in the box approach for small companies that don't have contracts and want to win them, or one or two, and then grow into those. So there's a spectrum of solutions and cost structures to help you get into the game if you're not there, and if you're in the game, to get you secure to maintain your current compliance path without large dollar amounts. But you got to pick within the strategy and the size of your companies where you want to go. So there's no one right size, it's right-sized and optimized solutions that you need to look at. That's where the consultants and everybody can help you figure out what to do. But that's important because that drives your costs. And then expand market opportunities. Now we talked about here in the Seattle area. I don't know how many of you guys work outside of Seattle, but I mean, there's a lot going on in Northrop, or over the East Coast, that you can now easily expose your value add to those sorts of primes and subcontractors over there and start selling, because there's just not that many people that have this skill and capability. So think outside the box. So I dig into a little bit deeper. Leverage compliance as a competitive advantage. This is so important. Because you put a lot of hard work, you put a lot of time, you're one of the first few, and that's going to be different from other companies that are incumbents that are there that don't have it. Leverage that. There's a question about, do we publicize that your company is a level 2? Well, in some ways, you don't want the adversaries to know that you're now level 2, but not level 3, right? However, you know, I think the Cyber AB is going to come out with some standards about what sort of public announcements you can do about your certifications. Public. But when you're talking to your customers or your primes or your partners, yell it off the rooftop. Yell it off the rooftop because it's private to them. It's not a public thing. The public's good, but nobody goes to your website to see if you're CMMC certified. They're going to call you. Right? Tell them. And then, like we talked about, the only way they're going to validate that you are is you're going to have to send them a screenshot of SPRS or whatever you get from the C3PO that says you are CMMC Level 2 certified. And today it's a screenshot. I was talking to the Boeing folks. They're creating a system right now so you can upload your certs to them so they can have that in their records along with all the other information they have about you. So that's how it's going to happen. It's going to be very manual for a while until it gets automated and Cyber ID introduces the marketplace that Mike talked about, where all the certified companies will go into the marketplace. So if you are a company that makes a specific part, you want to get your information up there. So if there's anybody in the country that's looking for somebody that makes your part that's the CMMC Level 2, they will find you and pull you into their RFIs, and they would have never found you before, right? They're going to be going to the central repository. This is a powerful thing. I know Mike talked about it. There's no real timeline, but keep an eye on that. Listen to Mike when that's coming and make sure you're one of the first ones in there, because that'll generate a ton of new business opportunities outside of who you know around here. Trust, we talked about trust through security. You got to deliver on what you say, right? It's just like your goods, right? If you oversell or say it does something and it doesn't, the trust gets eroded. You got to make sure you're secure. You're not getting hit with ransomware or breached, because you did put the time and effort into your security. You're not going to become a liability for your customers, because that's when that all ends. Because brand reputation depends on what you say. And if something happens, your brand's out the door and word spreads fast. So differential from customers and getting preferential treatment in contracts. So we talked about that. Expand into new markets. So the defense industrial base is global. And you may have Airbus, you know, for if you work in the aerospace business, you're already working in the global marketplace. There are a lot of other aerospace companies out there, and space companies, as well as defense companies. A lot of them are based here, which is amazing, right? You can go across the water and go meet with a few of them. Get out and go talk to them about this, because they don't get it yet. Space guys don't even understand. They're just trying to build their product. But talk to Blue Origin or SpaceX, and yeah, they got an audit team, but they're not reaching out. They're not talking. They were 3 years ago, but then they disappeared. So I know they need products. They want certified products because they want to take that risk off their own contracts that they're going to be receiving over the next few years for a lot of the space work. Get out of this area and go talk to folks. Reach out. Get it. You know, if you're only doing the naval stuff, go and talk to the space stuff. Go and talk to the aerospace. They all have the same requirement to have suppliers that are CMMC Level 2. And you might be the first one that reaches out and knocks on that door. What do you think could happen? Wow, I've been looking for somebody that does that. Come on in. And I guarantee if you had 10 calls like that, I bet you'd get 2 that actually you'll get a contract out if you did it today. And I don't know if that's interesting to you guys or not, but it's one of the reasons you're doing this, right? Because you want to stay in business, but man, let's take advantage of that investment and go get some more. And it takes a different mindset, right? You can't be intro focused. You got to have biz dev and people that know how to go out and demonstrate the differences that you have. But new markets, I've talked about new agencies globally. Canada's got a whole set of their own CMMC-like requirements coming that parallel CMMC Level 2, and they're just up the road, right? Go talk to the guys in Vancouver that are making stuff, right? You're going to be ahead of them what they need, right? I mean, I can go on and on about the opportunities, and you guys know through your associations, through your groups, who's looking for stuff. Talk to them that you're already CMMC Level 2. All of those are going to generate leads that will lead to more business. I like throwing stuff on the wall. See what sticks and what doesn't, who listens and who doesn't. Right now is that time to be doing that. I get passionate about this. I hope this is okay. You guys, is this good?
Yep.
All right, good. And if you have any questions, you can stop me or I just blow through this, I'm gonna just finish the questions and then you guys can kick me out. But I think the most important one, frankly, is your existing relationships with your customers and primes. Because you already have, they already know who you are, they know the quality of your product. And if you can go to them and say, hey, I got the product, I know you got 8 other programs, I'm now CMMC Level 2, can I get a part of those other programs? They go, absolutely. It's the easy path, right? As long as they need your product or service. Strengthen those relationships, talk to them, yell at them that we're here, we're ready to go, and that we're ready to reduce your risk, increase your revenue, we're here, we're stable, we know what we're doing, we can help you with your cybersecurity journeys. You want to buy us, we'll help you with your IT teams or whatever, we'll bring our expertise in here. There's so many different opportunities depending on you as owners and business dev where you want to take your companies. So that's just some approaches to go build more opportunities. Last side is how do you message that, right? And I'm into marketing 101, right? This is all about CMMC, but this is marketing, right? Lead with risk reduction, right? This whole thing is all your customers, they may care about costs, they used to care about costs, Boeing used to care about costs, but that didn't treat them very well in the long term. It's all about risk now, right? Risk of DOJ, risk of DOD, risk of not getting contracts with my teams. Go and lead with risk reduction. We're here, we reduce your exposure, we already have our supply chain managed, because you've got to make sure your supply chain underneath you is also managed like this, right? That data flow, wherever it goes, we talked a little about that, you've got to manage your supply chain data flow. Only give CUI to those suppliers that really need it, or bring them into your systems on a VDI or virtual to access it but not take it down, right? You really want to squeeze that footprint in to reduce the liability of them exposing that data, and it makes it easier for you to certify. So all of those sort of strategies help reduce your costs and optimize your risk reduction for your customers. They're looking for companies that know that what security is, security by design, it's institutionalized. That's what CMMC, the DoD wants, is companies that are willing to invest security by design, institutionalized. It's just part of their day-to-day business, just like safety is, right? So now safety for data versus safety for people. It's the same thinking that they have. And now it's safety for the data, which is safety to the warfighter, and frankly, safety to your employees. Maturity, low risk, we've been there, done that, we're a leader, trust us. It's our differentiator, we've got good products. Might be a little more expensive or a little less, but we've got the big CMMC, so give us a shot if you want to hit these upcoming contracts, right? That 3 combination there on the left side, I think would get you a shot at talking to the contract officer, or no, that was supply chain officer for any prime out there, or level 1 or 2. Give it a shot. Email me back, let me know if that really works or not for those that are ready, because that's what I'm hearing. And I want to adjust that and put reality on out of my speaking engagements, because this is really important. Position as compliance accelerator. This is a little bit different than what most product companies would do. Help their customers be aware of the compliance and security strategies and opportunities. But hey, if you're good and you're doing it for your downstream suppliers, they would probably love to hear about that. Maybe teach them to create an enclave for a particular program that everybody goes to, so you don't even ever get CUI on a flow down, especially if it's unmarked. Where is it? Whose is it? Do I create it? Is it passed down or do I not? There's so much ambiguity there that you really got to get control and reduce that risk. So providing some of that compliance expertise as your team is a good thing too. Partnership, stability, we're here, we're already certified. You don't have to think we're going to shoot for it and then fail and then we're not here. Again, it's keeping it simple, keeping it low risk, and providing the value that those customers need. And lastly, every audience is going to be different, right? We understand your priorities. You're talking to aerospace versus space versus naval. You got to understand their hot points and make sure that you translate what CMMC and how you value property we've got right here in front of you translates into winning a relationship with them and having a shot at those contracts. So that is what I had. Lots of good stuff. Is it helpful?
Yeah.
What questions? I'm open to questions, either about CMMC or about opportunities going forward, or we can just end.
They want to drink.
Okay. Oh, we got one over here.
Yeah, I have a question for you. So, for customers using a cloud service provider, that platform needs to be a FedRAMP moderate or equivalent, I believe, is correct if they're gonna store and process GUI.
Yeah, that's correct.
Do you expect that the moderate 20x pilot authorization program will be accepted in CMMC?
So you're talking about the FedRAMP 20X?
Exactly, yeah.
You know, I'm not close enough to that, but it better, because there's so many hosting environments right now that are trying to get an equivalent to a FedRAMP, so they can maintain their SaaS as a service and host data. So, and they're all looking at FedRAMP moderate. So how that fits in still needs to be determined as a roadmap, but they all will have to meet that high-level certification if they're hosting and storing or transmitting CUI. And that's SaaS or infrastructure. They all fall in that bucket. Joy, any hard questions for me? This is your chance.
I thought this was fabulous, Jerry. I have
thank
seen a gazillion CMMC presentations, and no one has focused on the benefit for the contractor. So well done, my friend. This is
Thank
very
you.
good.
Joy is an OG, so if you ever have a question, ask Joy or Kyle. Who else is here that I know from the original days? There's a few of us. But thank you. I'll be around. Oh, a question here.
In the event of acquisition, I assume if it's an asset purchase agreement, the certification wouldn't transfer over, but if it was a stock purchase and it did transfer over, would you have to get recertified or another assessment to prove that they still have those controls?
It really depends on how it's merged, right? If you're merging people, process, and technology into an existing CMMC boundary, yes, because now you're making major changes. If you kept them separate and they ran separately, then you wouldn't. But that would be a significant change by changing infrastructure or merging and having to rip something out, put something new in. They want to know about that. And the one point about significant change, it's always up to the contract officer. So if you are doing something, go talk to him first. Say, hey, we're going to think about doing this. Would this trigger another C3PO audit because we're replacing AWS with a Microsoft stack? So yeah, it changes processes and people and the technology piece. That would have to go through. When, I don't know, because that's a long sort of implementation timeline. You might have to run them parallel until your next, or at the end of your third year, then you switch over and get a full audit on the new environment. So there's mitigation strategies, but those are, get consultants like Kyle or Joy, and we can tell you that insight so you can make smart, informed decisions. And that's what I try to do is I really work at the executive level. We do executive CMMC foundation classes, and we help them understand really what's ahead of them so they can make informed decisions about how to move forward. So, because unless you know what's going on or those sorts of gotchas and vendors that might get you, you really can't be successful. It's going to take a lot longer, a lot more expensive. We want to get it right-sized, cost optimized, and get you through as fast as possible with a solution that works for you. And that's what all of us want to do, because why else would you do that? So. Questions? More? Okay. Steve, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.